All right, welcome back. I want to discuss my opinions of how each player on the Minnesota Wild has played throughout the first 4 games of the season. There are little red like annotation marks for Johansson, Eriksson Ek, and Spurgeon, as they are both on day to day. They're both injured. All three of them missed last night's game. We'll dive into that. But starting off with the first line, I'm going to go player by player. Kirill Kaprizov, he is the entire package. I do think he needs to get to that superstar level. I think he's been great the first 4 games, but there is another level. He's more than capable of hitting. We've seen it every single year. He often gets off to slower starts. 6 points in 4 games isn't bad, especially considering he played almost 28 minutes last night, which is insane for a forward. And he looked good doing it. But there is a little extra offensive scoring touch that is there with Kaprizov that we haven't seen just yet. So as good as he's been, there is another level that he will get to probably pretty soon. It would not surprise me. But he is capable of elevating his game more than he has played. And I think a lot of players would kill just to have the start Kaprizov has had because he's looked fantastic. He's been one of the best skaters on the ice for both teams in every game he's played. But again, there is another level he is capable of hitting. So, Kaprizov, great start. Could be a little better, but it's been a great start, and there's no diminishing what Kaprizov has done and what he's meant for this team and the motivation. There's a whole lot. He is the complete package. Plays that 200-foot game, gets into those gritty areas. He can score those gritty goals. He's a great passer. He's a good teammate, good playmaker, right? He's really the complete package of a player, and even some superstars in the league. I'm a Bruins fan, right? And we have David Pastrnak, but Kaprizov plays, in my opinion, a more complete game than David Pastrnak. Pastrnak is primarily offense all the time, whereas Kaprizov plays a lot of defense. Really gets into those gritty areas almost every single time or every single shift he's on the ice. David Pastrnak, you see that, but it's not comparable. And I'm a big Pasta fan. I have 2 Pasta jerseys. I absolutely love him. Absolute superstar in the league. Both players are fantastic. I think Pastrnak scoring upside is a little higher than Kaprizov, but Kaprizov plays a much more complete game than Pastrnak. For example, we're comparing apples to apples, superstar to superstar type thing anyway. Marco Rossi, I think, has played pretty well. I've liked a lot of his toughness, his grittiness along the boards. He's won a lot of battles. I think he's focusing too much on defense, in my opinion. And the defense he's played through the 4 games is fantastic. He has been incredible in his own defensive zone. Got to give him credit. We're really starting to see Marco Rossi with the confidence, the playmaking abilities, and I think he's getting there. I think there's more potential. He's not quite firing on all cylinders. You'd like to see some type of improvement from him, but overall, Marco Rossi's been good. Has he been great? No. Has he kind of built on last year a little bit? But this will be a process through the first few games or a few more games to see how he progresses on that line, how he develops that chemistry with Zuccarello and Kaprizov, right? We'll see. I think there's more to be unlocked with Kaprizov. You can see flashes of his brilliance, but still needs to come all together on the ice. Zuccarello, I like his game for the most part. He's shooting the puck, which is fantastic. I think he has 2 goals in 4 games. He's not going to sustain that. That's a 40-goal pace. He's not going to score 40 goals, and that's perfectly okay. You don't need him to. Some of his passes have been great, and some of his passes have been pretty terrible. What I do really like about Zuccarello's game is he's been playing defense, or at least trying to play defense, and not doing a bad job, but he's put a lot more effort on the defensive end of the puck than we've seen him play in Minnesota since he's got there. And that I personally like. I appreciate that a lot. It shows that effort, that want to win, that you have to play a 200-foot game if you want to win. And Zuccarello, not a defensive guy, but He's in his own zone. He's getting behind the net. He's getting to the gritty areas, and that's fantastic. I do have questions about his offense at this age. I know he's scoring at a pretty decent clip, but I don't know. Um, he's I don't know. I think he's more suited for like a second line role, but at the same time, your second line through the first two games looked good, and then Eriksson Ek injured, broken nose, uncalled elbow to the face. Um, he's been out 2 games now. He was supposed to be back last game. Maybe he'll be back whenever they play next Saturday, I think. Um, Johansson, I'm not sure. I thought it was an illness, but he's out for whatever reason. Right, Johansson actually looked really good. It looks like he's playing for his job, which is actually nice to see because when Johansson applies himself, he's a really good hockey player. He's going to the gritty areas. He's taking hits. He's giving hits. He's sprinting up and down the ice, and you didn't see really any of that last year. So that's nice. If Johansson keeps playing at this level, I'm fine with him being stable to that second line. If he regresses back to where he was last year, he will immediately need to be moved down in the lineup. Right? He needs to show that he can consistently play at a level of a top six forward to be in the top six. But overall, Johansson's game through the first 3 games has looked fantastic. Eriksson Ek, it's been good. You kind of know what you're going to get from Eriksson Ek. He's going to hustle. He's going to play a full, complete 200-foot game. I think he scored a goal. He's going to supplement his offensive line. You kind of know what you're going to get with him. He's very consistent and somehow finds a way to slightly improve year over year. Even though he's 27 now. Every single year he's gotten better. I love Eriksson Ek. I'd like to see more of Eriksson Ek in the lineup. Hopefully he comes back. I know he'll try to come back as soon as possible. Matt Boldy has been absolutely outstanding to start the season off. It's been fun to watch. He had that no look goal. He's been playing defense, playing offense, being confident, shooting the puck, doing weird shots that kind of fool everybody. He's been making fantastic passes. Matt Boldy is fantastic so far. I think he's been the best player on the entire team, minus the goaltending, to this point. I think Matt Boldy has been that good, and that's no disrespect for Kaprizov, because Kaprizov's been pretty damn good. Matt Boldy's been just as good, if not better. The second line, when it's together and Johansson's hustling and Boldy is confident in finding that consistency of excellence in his game, that's going to be a fantastic second line. Moving on to the third line. On the entire flip side, this has been kind of a rough line. Hartman has played on that second line the past 2 games because Hustadinov has been playing as center on that second or third line. Marcus Foligno has sort of thrown the body around. For him to be engaged, he needs to be physically engaged, and then the defense and offense really, really thrives. He's always pretty solid defensively, but there has been zero offense with him. And from a third liner in this day and age in the NHL, this league, it's more of a skill league. You need to score some of those goals, or at the very least be an absolute shutdown line. And I don't think he's been poor. I don't think he's been bad. But there needs to be more engagement from Marcus Foligno. Hartman, I think, has been fine. He's shown up for certain shifts and really made a difference. He scored a couple of goals. I think he's looked good, but in general, again, needs more consistency. You don't see him flying up and down the ice every shift. He kind of disappears for most of the game. I think Hartman, if you get a full 60-minute effort from Hartman, is an incredible player. Somewhere in that middle six, he can play on that second line and not look out of place. He can hop to be your first line center if you need him to be, and not look super out of place, right? He's very versatile. Play center, play either wing, play a defensive role if you need him to, play an offensive role if you need him to. I think maybe he's just getting his legs under him type thing. I don't think he's been a liability by any means, but there's more to his game that he knows he can bring, and we all know he can bring. But hasn't looked bad, right? Trennan, Trennan and Foligno kind of not so great so far. Trennan will try to forecheck, and he's usually the forechecker, and that's one of his fortes. He's good at it. But again, between Foligno and Trennan, it's like the motivation and the engagement hasn't really been there. You haven't seen it. Both of these players are capable of scoring 20 goals. And I know if you don't watch the Minnesota Wild, that can sound asinine. Marcus Foligno, the big guy, big lug scoring 20 goals, yeah, he's got a nice shot. And when he drives to the net, he can make a few moves and score. That's when he's engaged, though. We haven't seen engagement from either of these guys. Trennan, again, 20-goal upside. Haven't seen really any offense from him at all. Same with Foligno. Moving down to line number 4, Freddie Gaudreau. Let's be real. Freddie Gaudreau had a terrible season last year. We know he was hurt, but this dude tries every time he's on the ice. He gives it his all every time he's on the ice. He works really hard, and you have to respect that. He looks a lot better this year. Some of the goals are coming. We saw him get a couple of shifts on the second line in place of Liam Ogren this last game, and he looked good. He wasn't like blowing people's minds, but he didn't look out of place, and he was giving 100% effort. I can't say really anything negative about Freddie Gaudreau at this point. He can slot in to take faceoffs if you need him to. He can play wing. Versatile player, kind of like Ryan Hartman. I like his game so far, I'm not going to lie. Hustadinov. Kind of a little bit of greatness and not so greatness. The last 2 games when he's been on that third line, it hasn't been a good match for Hustadinov with Trennan and Foligno. We'll see Hustadinov bring the puck into the offensive zone, and it'll be like Hustadinov against 5 of the defenders, and he's waiting for his forwards to kind of catch up and join the play. And over time, you lose the puck, right? And that happens. I like the idea of Hustadinov playing a third-line role, but with Foligno and Trennan as your wingers, I don't know that line is necessarily set up to succeed. I love Hustadinov. I think we've seen some sloppy play from him. I'm going to be completely honest. I think we've seen some excellent defensive play. We've seen flashes of his speed. I think he's focusing a little too much on defense because that's supposed to be the identity of the Foligno, Hustadinov, Trennan line. It's supposed to be kind of like the old Grief line with Eriksson, Ek, Foligno, and Jordan Greenway, right? Going back, one of the best shutdown lines in the league, one of the best defensive lines in the league. I think that was kind of the aim for Hustadinov slotting in on that third line because Hustadinov's defense, pretty good face-off guy. But I don't know. Even when he's played in the fourth line, you haven't seen enough of him to really make a determination in that fourth line, right? And that's been tough. And again, at times he's looked pretty sloppy, and at times he's shown flashes of just how good he can be. This is a guy that would mesh better with a second or first line on this specific team, or a more skilled third line, more offensively talented third line would really be a good fit for Hustadinov. I don't know what the plan is going forward. I'd like to see him get that start on a second line over a guy like Ryan Hartman to see how he does. But at the same time, I don't think he's necessarily shown enough to warrant putting him on that second line, even playing with the players he has. Because again, some of his play hasn't looked great. And I love the dude. I think he's fantastic. But we're moving on to Jakub Lauko. Lauko has been as advertised. Again, I'm a Bruins fan. I've seen a lot of Lauko in my lifetime, even though he's 24 or something. He's only been up for like a couple of years now at the NHL level. He's good. He can play that fourth line gritty grinder role, but he's got some skill and he's got some speed, and he's really become a strong human being the past couple of years playing in a fourth line grinder role in Boston. Right? So he can do a little bit of everything. He had a nice shorthanded goal last night where he kind of muscled a guy off of him because he's strong. And then was able to kind of get that tip on the forehand over Binnington's pad. And he looked great and it looked natural. That's kind of what you can expect from Lauko. He's a guy that's going to work hard every shift. He's not going to wow you in the stat column. He's probably not going to wow you in the hits department, but he can throw hits. If you need him to drop the gloves, he can. I don't. He's not really a fighting type of guy, but he can. He's tough. He'll work hard, and he'll give you everything he has, regardless of what role he's in. I think he's played very well through the first 4 games in Minnesota. I'm glad he scored his first goal. Got that monkey off his back per se, but he's looked good. Last up for the forward group so far that we've seen play is Liam Ogren. Liam Ogren kind of buried on that fourth line for his first game. It was not a good fit for him. This is a guy that should probably see time in that top 6, top 9 at the very least, right? Liam Ogren is essentially a power forward who likes to shoot the puck, which is what the Wild need, right? Going back to that first line, you got Kaprizov, who can pot 50 goals. You got Rossi, who's a playmaker, and you got Zuccarello, who's also a playmaker, right? Of these guys, Kaprizov's kind of the only one that's going to shoot the puck. Second line, Eriksson Ek will get those rebounding gritty goals, but is more pass first once you're outside of the crease. Johansson, more of a playmaker, pass first type guy unless he's on a breakaway, and Boldy will shoot, right? There's a lot of passers, not a whole lot of shooters. You need to score goals to win. How do you score goals? You shoot. You got to get good shots. You have to have guys to set them up. But at the same time, if you have too many setup guys and not enough shooter guys, it makes the defensive coverage easy. So I do love that Liam Ogren isn't shying away from shooting the puck. I do love that he's strong and able to win those board battles. He's able to play defense. At the same time, we saw him play some of last night's game on that second line. And he started off looking rough. He finished the game pretty strong, but saw a significant reduction in minutes, partly due to Freddie Gaudreau popping up onto that line. We saw some line mix-ups, and some of them were head scratchers, and some of them were like making sense. But we didn't really see Liam Ogren get back to that second line consistency. I think he finished the game strong. Again, I might be repeating myself. This is a kid that needs NHL experience. He needs to play to get that experience, and with time will look good at an NHL level. But I think this is a guy that needs to be in the NHL, playing NHL defenses, right? Getting those NHL hits and playing those board battles and shooting on NHL goaltenders. So I do like Liam Ogren. He's been iffy. He showed flashes of greatness, and he showed flashes of being a top 6 forward, and showed flashes of not really being at the point of being an NHL player. So I like him. That's my opinion on Liam Ogren through the first. He's only played 2 games so far. It's still early for him, right? Moving on to the defense, Jonas Brodin, I think, has been outstanding. I think he's played better than he did last year. I think he took a bit of a step back last year, which was out of character for him. He's very consistently an excellent defensive defenseman. And I think we're back to that. He's looked excellent in his own zone. He's kind of covering up for those defensive mistakes that are made by his partner or whoever. He looks really good. Brock Faber, I think, offensively, I think his game has been more focused, and I think this is a result of the coaching staff telling him to be a little more offensive-minded than defensive-minded. Brock Faber, when he plays defense, is fantastic. There's no beating around the bush. He's an excellent defenseman. But he's been focusing a little more on offense, and he's looked very good in the offensive zone. He's been driving behind the net, kind of reminiscent of Charlie McAvoy to an extent, right? But I think his defense has taken a bit of a step back as a result of priorities. Now, I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not there for the coaches' conversations with Brock Faber. Playing with a guy like Brodin or Middleton, as he has recently, both defensive defensemen, you can usually activate one of your defensemen to be a little more offensively minded. And I think that's what they're trying to do with Faber. And I think it's worked. He's played very well, especially in the offensive zone. I don't think he's been bad or necessarily a liability on defense, but we're not seeing his defensive game grow from what it was last year. But it's only through 4 games, and we'll see, because he's been paired with the guy we're going to talk next, Jake Middleton, who has played absolutely fantastic. He is the epitome of a defensive defenseman. We see ups and downs, and he was paired with Faber last year for, I don't know, was it like 15, 16 games, and he did not look good paired with Faber. It was like Spurgeon was his defensive partner, that they really played really well together. They were excellent. But Middleton's come back, and he's looked very good regardless of who he's playing with. He's seen time with Faber, Spurgeon, and Bogosian so far this year, and has been fantastic with all 3 of them. So that's highly encouraging that he's still working on his game and getting better. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Middleton right now. He's been playing very well. Next up, we got Jared Spurgeon, who I believe has missed his 2nd game. I think he's only played 2 games with an unknown injury. We don't know what the injury is. Coming off of a season he missed most of last year, had major hip and back surgery, 2 separate things. It's a little concerning, but I will say he's been in the lineup for 2 games, and he looked fantastic in those 2 games, especially when he's in the lineup. This top 4 is outstandingly good. All 4 of these guys could play exceptional defense, and you can get some offense from your right side with Faber and Spurgeon. Now, I'm not optimistic Spurgeon will be back. Unfortunately, he's a great guy, and you can kind of see the difference when he's in and out of the lineup in terms of like motivation and engagement from your entire team and things like that. He is the captain. So it's kind of a shame, but his defense, his offensive capabilities, they were very good. It looked like he didn't miss a step. So it's a bit of a shame he's out. John Merrill, I think, has been fine. If he's given specifically a role just to be a defensive defenseman, he's serviceable. He's fine. I think he's played pretty well. He's kind of shown his veteran presence. That positioning that some of the rookies may not have down to a science. He's good. He's been fine through the first 4 games. I haven't had any issues with John Merrill yet. We'll see. Again, with John Merrill, it's that consistency. Once he starts to hit games 17, 18, you could see a drop in his play. You might not. But he finished the season strong last year. I think he's starting the season strong this year. He's looked good in that 3rd pairing role. I would not expect to see him elevated to a top 4 role. But so far, I don't have an issue with John Merrill playing games right now. You asked me that a year ago, like last December, I would have said I did have an issue, but here we are. He's looked good. Zach Bogosian, I think, has been outstanding again. The defensive core has been so good this year, right? And the buy-in of defense from your forwards has also been exceptional. This is a team that's been very defensively focused through the first 4 games, which all the good teams in the NHL are. So that's nice to see. I'm not saying this is one of the best teams in the NHL, but at the same time, that's a major contributing factor to winning hockey. So Zach Bogosian, physical, really good with the stick. If you don't overplay Zach Bogosian, he is fantastic. Like, he's good. He's not a first line defenseman, right? He can sub in on that second line, but again, you have to kind of do a little minutes managing with him. Otherwise, there will be holes in his game, and that'll become apparent. But Bogosian so far has looked fantastic. I have 0 quarrels with his play. Also, his name is technically said Bogosian, so there's that. Armenian. I was looking at pronunciation charts, and I was like, that's an Armenian name, because I know a lot of Armenian people. and that's It's not Bogosian, it's Bogosian. So that's a fun fact. Declan Chisholm and Damon Hunt both made their season debuts last night, both playing limited roles, very limited. Seeing pretty low ice time, especially for a defenseman. I'd like to attribute it to I'd like to attribute their low ice time to it being their season debut, get their legs going, ease them back into the NHL, right? Because it's a league that moves full speed, especially 4 games into the season, and it's your very first time playing. It can be a lot, and it can be very tiring, very fast. We'll see. They played 7 defensemen last night, but they also had Kaprizov playing 28 minutes. They also had Faber playing over 24 minutes. You had some other defensemen at and above 20 minutes. There's time to go around, but Chisholm, I think, looked really good. Very much of a 200-foot player, at least last night. This is a player that there can be defensive deficiencies with his game at times, but he didn't display them last night. Damon Hunt, I thought, looked fantastic last night. He was winning puck battles. He was driving into the offensive zone. He was producing offense while not giving up his position defensively. I was impressed with Damon Hunt. I'd like to see him in the lineup on a more consistent basis, at least in a third-line role, or at least with third-line minutes. I think this is a guy that you need to bring into the NHL and develop because he will be a future piece on your blue line at some point. It's again, you got to start developing those young kids if you want them to succeed. Some of these guys are at that point where you need to get them NHL playing time. So Chisholm, Hunt, I think have both been fine. One of them will see playing time while Spurgeon is out. I would assume it's Declan Chisholm. But again, I'd like to see Damon Hunt at least get some time in that lineup, get a few games here and there. Moving on to the goaltending, Philip Gustafsson has been the best player on this team. As good as Boldy and Kaprizov and a lot of the defensive players have been, Philip Gustafsson has been absolutely outstanding, making highlight reel saves. He looks engaged for a full 60 minutes. He looks in shape. He's tracking the puck really well from all aspects, from in close, from afar, from the face-off dots, from everywhere. He's tracking the puck behind the net. It's absolutely fantastic to watch. This is what Philip Gustafsson is capable of. It is. Now, I don't think he's going to maintain his 966 save percentage or something like that. Yeah, it might be around there. But at the same time, he can be an elite goaltender in the league. But it's really on Gustafsson. And I think the whole team buying into playing defense has definitely helped. But at the same time, there have been instances throughout the first 4 games where Gustafsson has been left high and dry, and he's made some incredible saves to kind of save the team and help them get a win. And I think Gustafsson is a big reason as to why this team has won a couple of games so far. I think they're 2-0-2, right? He's been good. I mean, you look at the shots. I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I remember I was watching last night's game. There was 6:48 or something. It was 6:40 something left in the second period, so we're over 33 minutes played in the game. The Wild only had 5 shots on goal, right? I think they had at least 2 goals. I'm not sure if they got their third one yet. Nope, that was Gustafsson on that empty net. So they were up 2-0, but they only had 5 shots on net against the Blues, right? That's not great. You need a little more offense, and if you're relying on your goaltender to kind of make those highlight reel saves consistently, that might not work out for the long term. It's worked out so far, but again, this team is buying into playing team defense, so they're really preventing a lot of, they're cleaning up the crease, cleaning up those rebounds, keeping the shooters to the outside when possible. And it's still early in the season. We're still seeing players being able to drive to the net and kind of make these plays that are defendable, right? But Gustafson's played exceptional. Fleury didn't look poor the only game he's played. I think it was game 2, but he didn't look good. He's a great guy. He's a little older, which is fine. We've seen some older goaltenders play exceptional in this league. Tim Thomas, not quite as old as Fleury is. Rolison, right? Rolison, am I remembering that? I think he was 40 and had a very good season when he was 40. Fleury is a serviceable backup, and he will be. But this is kind of what you expect from Fleury. This is what we saw last year from Fleury. He'll have games where he looks very good, but he's going to let in goals, right? It's going to happen. It happens with his play style. Again, his play style mixed with his age tend not to mix too well, tend to lead to a few more goals. And, it is what it is. It's kind of what you expect from Fleury. At this point, he's a backup goaltender, and he's not a bad backup. Is he one of the best backups in the league? Probably not. But this is his farewell tour. He has a no movement clause. He's a legend in the game. He's going to see playing time. He's not going to be moved unless Fleury wants to be moved at the deadline to like Montreal or something. So I think it's fine. I think he's there mostly for that locker room and for the goaltending development. I think Gustafsson has learned a lot from Fleury, and I think the intention is for Fleury to help teach Jesper Wallstedt how to be an NHL goaltender and the importance of the little things you need to do and the preparation and stuff that goes into it. A player I would like to see sooner rather than later is Jesper Wallstedt, the third goalie. This is a guy hasn't played a game yet in the AHL or NHL. This is a player you want to play games. You want him in the lineup at some point, whether it's at the AHL or NHL level. This is a guy you need to continue to develop. Technically, he should have some type of shot in the NHL. I think he will next year based on the $2+ million contract they extended him to. But at the same time, you got to get this kid some playing time. The more shots he faces, the more weaknesses are exposed, and the more opportunity there is to fix those weaknesses and turn them into strengths. And then he becomes that much better of a goaltender. You're not able to improve if you're not seeing those shots, and especially game shots are different from practice time shots. Again, I'd love to see Jesper Wallstedt play an NHL game, but if you're not going to play him in the NHL, at least put him in the AHL and give him some playing time. You got to continue to give these guys reps for them to continue to develop to make an impact in your future Minnesota Wild roster. So that's my honest assessment of every player so far with the Minnesota Wild. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Obviously, this is just me watching hockey and kind of taking note of players and where they are and who's on the ice and what's their positioning, what are they doing away from the puck, and so on. But everyone is probably going to have a different opinion. Some are going to look at stats a little more than play, and some are going to look a little more at play than stats. And at this point, I'm looking a little more at play than stats. Marco Rossi is a point-per-game player right now. I don't necessarily think he's played to a level of being a point-per-game player. And same with Zuccarello, right? Zuccarello, I think, has 4 points in 4 games. Maybe it's 5. At the same time, is that does their level of play kind of live up to their points? I would say with Rossi, no, and Zuccarello, probably not. Maybe around 3 points is what his level of play is indicated. But the point is, it doesn't matter. The point is, everyone's going to have a different opinion, and there's no right or wrong. This is just a fun discussion. And kind of what I've taken away from 4 Minnesota Wild games so far. I'll probably do this with the Boston Bruins, although this has turned into an unnecessarily long video. So if you stuck it out, I appreciate you. Take care, all right?